Hello, everybody. My name is Vaishali Sethi, and I am currently doing my PIDP 3340 course with Dr. Dwayne Harapnik, and I'm going to present my presentation today on collaborative learning strategies to foster teamwork. So, thank you so much for everybody who is listening to me, and I'm going to share my screen and start my PPT right now. Um, okay. I hope you all can see my screen. So, so today, again, I'm just repeating my topic that I'm going to present on collaborative learning strategies to foster teamwork. So since I think whoever is going to watch this video, we all are instructors from different disciplines, right? So I'll try to keep this practical and adaptable so that you can use different learnings in your trade, business, health, humanities, or whatever course you teach. So in this presentation, I'm going to cover about what is the difference between collaborative and cooperative learning. I'm sorry, I have a little bad throat, so I might cough or sneeze in between. So please bear with me. And then I'm going to talk about theory behind teamwork, 5 core elements of productive teams, and mainly I'll talk about 4 strategies what we can directly use for collaborative learning. And finally, I'll end with the best practices for the implementation. So let's start our presentation by clearing some common confusion, which is collaborative versus cooperative learning. So now, what is collaborative and cooperative learning? So while these terms are actually often used interchangeably, but I have to highlight a very, very useful distinction between them. Collaborative learning is more of a philosophy. The students like co-constructs meaning together. It can be loosely structured or emphasized. It can emphasize discussion, negotiation, and respecting peer contributions. However, cooperative learning is more of like a structured method. It is like mixed ability groups with clear steps designed to maximize in their mutual learning. So, in simple words, cooperation often means splitting the work, while collaboration means working the same task together at the same time. This is the real meaning. So, for example, if students divide a report into 4 parts and they stitch it together, so what is called it is called as cooperation. However, if they jointly analyze one case and they recommend one recommendation together, then that is called as collaboration. So I hope the key distinction is clear. Now that we are now clear with this distinction, let's look at the research foundations that explain why collaborative learning builds teamwork. So this is a very interesting picture where you can see the group work is all just messed up, right? So group work is like if you're not giving proper instructions, it is all people don't know what exactly they have to do. However, teamwork is sorted and teamwork is more organized. So collaboration doesn't just happen, it has to be aligned, right? So without explicit instruction, group work is just like sitting arrangement. People are sitting different places. So we must move from creating opportunities to reinforcing interdependence and then to manage complex factors, and which ultimately leads to teamwork. Okay, now coming to the theoretical foundations behind this teamwork. So there are 3 theories I would like to highlight here. First one is social interdependence theory. So this theory proposes that it says that the way we structure goals, it determines how students interact. So when the goal is structured and as positive interdependence, students show some promotive interaction. That means they encourage and support each other's success, right? So if we want teamwork, we design tasks where students need each other. It should not happen that they are just dividing and disappearing. So the second theory is zone of proximal development, which is given by Vygotsky. Learning grows when a learner is supported by a more knowledgeable person. So that can be a peer or an instructor, right? So in groups, peers can actually scaffold each other. They can explain a concept, they can model process, check the understanding. So this is how more understanding and development can happen when they're working in teamwork. And the third principle or the third theory is cognitive development by Piaget. So, in this, when students encounter different viewpoints, that productive mental friction helps them to reorganize thinking and they reach a deeper understanding. So, for example, in a marketing class, students may argue about customer segments, or maybe in an engineering class, they may propose different design constraints or some design, uh, uh, you know, designs basically. That conflict, if it is managed well, it pushes to better reasoning, better understanding, which one is better to take that forward. Okay, so that is how theoretical foundations work. So now theory supports teamwork, but in the real classrooms, again, group works can fail. So that is why we need the next slide, which is the five elements that prevents team from imploding. So what are the foundational principles on which the effective collaboration or effective teamwork is built on? Okay, so in this slide, the key message is that effective collaboration doesn't depend on the subject we teach or the age of the learners. It relies on the small set of teachable, repeatable practices. In other words, teamwork is not just a personality trait or luck with group members. It is something we can design and coach, right? So there are five foundational principles here. So the first one is to foster cooperation. So, sorry. This means that we are designing tasks where success is interdependent. If students can divide the work and never truly interact, they may finish a task, but they won't build teamwork. So I aim to create tasks where each person's contribution is necessary. For example, each learner has a unique role, a unique piece of information, or a step that depends on the previous step as well. Okay, the second step is encouraging play, which means play is not only for young learners. So, even in adult learning, structured games or low stake challenges help learners practice take turn, negotiation, communication. So, the point is not fun for fun's sake here. It is to build social skills, collaboration, habits in safe, low, and like less pressure way. Then, third is the praise process. This is really important. We often praise outcomes, but collaboration improves when we recognize behaviors. So, I try to name and what I saw. For example, I say, I noticed you invited a quieter member in. That's good. You paraphrased before disagreeing, or you resolved conflict very calmly, right? So these kind of reinforcement teaches students what good teamwork looks like. Okay. Then the fourth one is to create opportunity, where teamwork improves with practice. So if we do only one group project at the end of the term and students don't get enough repetition to build skills, so that might not be helpful. So we need consistent opportunities like short collaborative tasks, quick breakout room discussions, peer review activities, so that teamwork is practiced regularly and not occasionally. Okay. And then the fifth one is teaching explicitly. This means we define and model successful collaboration. We can show what roles look like, what respectful disagreement sounds like, what a good group discussion process is. So, these kind of things we must tell to our students. Many students have never been taught how to collaborate, they've only been told to work in a group. So they just divide the thing and do. Explicit teaching turns that into a skill that they can repeat. So if I summarize this slide in one sentence, effective collaboration is built when we intentionally design for interdependence, practice, feedback, and explicit skill building, not just by putting the students in the groups. Okay, so now let's look at some of the strategies of collaborative learning. So the first strategy is jigsaw method, right? Now that we have already talked about these foundational principles of collaboration, so now the next question is what happens when we apply these principles using proven structured method? So the first method I want to talk here is jigsaw method, which is very popular as well. Sorry. It was originally created by Aronson in 1978 to help reduce intergroup prejudice, and it is widely used today because it is simple, structured, and very effective for building teamwork. Now, what I like about Jigsaw is that it embodies many of the principles that we discussed earlier, especially like interdependence, accountability, respectful peer teaching as well. Even though it looks straightforward, but it is very, very powerful model for understanding deeper complexities for collaboration. Now, let me walk you through the four steps which are seen in the screen. The first step is home groups. So, first, students are placed in diverse home groups, usually like 3 to 7 students. And the goal here is diversity in ability, background, or perspective so that the group benefits from different strengths. So one of the tip from my side is that keep groups small, that even so that everyone should be able to speak, so 3 to 5 I think works best for online classes, for breakout rooms, and for other classes as well. The second is expert groups. Next, students temporarily move into the same expert groups where students who have the same piece of material, they meet together. Now, their job is to master that content and decide how will we teach this clearly to others. Okay. So this is where deeper learning happens because they need to organize knowledge, ask questions, and also clear the confusions. Now, the third is teaching back. So where the students then return to their home groups to teach their piece of puzzle. This is the most important part for teamwork. Now, everyone becomes a contributor and the group depends on each member to learn the full topic. Now, why it builds teamwork? Because it creates real positive interdependence. The team can't succeed if one expert doesn't teach well or if they don't listen actively. Right? Make sense? So, then the first step is integration. Finally, the home group synthesizes all the pieces into final product. For example, a short solution, maybe a concept map, or a case recommendation, or group summary, whatever. So, this step matters again because it forces team to integrate and not just share the information. Okay, so a key success point here is that co-teaching is most effective when the content complexity fits students' ability levels. So it is the expert material which is, if the expert material is too hard, students can teach it confidently. So if it is too easy, there is no meaningful learning or need for them. So there has to be right appropriate student material as well. So, for example, in business or marketing class, I usually, ask each students they expert one framework on market segmentation, or they can come up with some kind of marketing strategy, and they build kind of a unified strategy for a particular business or a particular plan. Okay, so this is how we can use in business classes as well. Now that we have seen this jigsaw method as structured method and which creates interdependence, I'll move to the next strategy, which is called as team-based learning, which is another strategy which strengthens teamwork using readiness checks and decision-based application tasks, basically. So this team-based learning, TBL, is like a full structure that reliably transforms groups into high-performing teams. So the first step here is the readiness assurance process. So first we need to ask students to take an individual test, which is IRAT, and then the same test is taken as a team, which is TRAT, so that everyone is prepared. So this ensures that preparation and triggers that peer teaching. And then there are these 4S of the application task in which they have, so basically they have this 4S design in which they have significant problem, same problem, specific choice, and simultaneous report, which I'll explain this in detail in my coming slides. So first, let's understand the 4 pillars of team-based learning. So why does it work well? So first, think of this TBL like a strong building. If one pillar is weak, the whole structure becomes shaky, right? So this visual shows that 4 pillars holding up the roof of the team learning. And the base says that it is very, very important, which is instructor as the designer. So that we are the base of this team-based learning. So the teamwork success is not left to chance. We design for it. So the first pillar is permanent groups. The first pillar, which means that teams stay together for a meaningful period of time, like whole term maybe, right? So why does this matter? Because teamwork improves with repeated interaction. When groups keep changing every week, students don't build trust, norms, or shared rhythm. With stable teams, students start learning how each other thinks, how to divide roles fairly, and how to resolve conflict more smoothly. Okay. Then the second pillar is individual accountability. This pillar solves one of the biggest complaints we hear, which is I did all the work, right? So most of the students say that. So in PBL, students are accountable as individuals before the teamwork begins. For example, through pre-class preparation and individual readiness checks. That means that each person arrives with something to contribute. So this reduces free riding and helps teams function more fairly. It also improves confidence in the team because students know that others are also prepared. Okay. The third pillar is immediate feedback, which is like in teamwork, feedback cannot come if 2 weeks later. It needs to come during the learning process so that teams can adjust their approach right away. So TBL creates fast feedback loops, like teams find out quickly whether the reasoning is working or not. So this immediate feedback strengthens teamwork because it encourages teams to talk through logic, correct misunderstandings, to correct their misunderstandings and build shared understanding in the real time. And the fourth pillar is assignment design, which is the 4S design. I'm going to talk in detail in the next slide about it. Okay, so this is the approach we need to have. So in TBL, the tasks are designed so that teams must make decisions, they should defend their choices, and explain reasoning. These tasks are not just divide and submit assignments, they are structured so that teams must think together. The key idea is to that good task design forces collaboration. And very important is the base, which is instructor. So instructor as designer. So TBL is not a technique again where we just put students into the groups and hope teamwork will happen on itself. It is a system where we intentionally design teams, for the stability, for accountability, feedback, decision-based tasks. So this is what transforms group work into genuine teamwork. So, if we summarize this slide, permanent teams build trust, accountability prevents free riding, immediate feedback provides team learning, and strong task design forces to have meaningful collaborations. Now, let's talk about the 4S framework, which is very, very important in this TBL strategy. So, the idea is simple. If the assignment is designed well, it becomes almost impossible for students to divide and conquer and avoid real collaboration. Let's take one medicine so that I can speak. So the first essay belongs to the significant problem, which is like having an authentic context. So which means the task has to feel very real and worth solving. If the problem is too easy or too artificial, teams will not, they don't need, will talk and they will just complete it quickly. But if it is like authentic, it is like based on some real workplace scenario, like a case, a safety decision, or a real constraint, teams naturally engage because the decision actually matters. For example, which design is at the most risk or why? Like which intervention should we choose for this scenario? So we should have like those kind of questions. Then the second is same problem. So the comparison should be possible. So every team works on the same challenge. So this is because it is important that we should have comparison between what they are doing. So when teams solve different problems, again, it is hard to debrief in a class. When all the teams respond to the same problem, we can compare reasoning and learn from each other's logic. So we should have same problem for all the teams. Specific choice, that means concrete action. So teams must make a clear concrete choice. This prevents again long unfocused reports, or and it forces consensus. So teams must debate, prioritize, commit to one's option. So instead of writing a report on different options, like we should say, okay, choose A, B, or C. So choose, rank one of these options from 1 to 4, or select the best solution and justify the reasons. So like this is like small design change is very important because teamwork then students can negotiate and agree on one point. And then the fourth is simultaneous report. So there should be no answer drift. So teams should reveal their choice at the same time. This reduces answer drift where teams can change their decisions after hearing another team. It also increases accountability because every team must commit, right? For example, on online meetings, we can use polls or Mentimeter, or we can ask them to type their options on chat. So this is how the 4S framework can be used for TBL. So if I summarize this whole slide, so 4S tasks are designed to make teamwork unavoidable. Teams must engage with a meaningful problem, make a specific decision, and publicly commit to it. So transition. So right. So the next is we are going to we talk about the next strategy, which is called as SAC, which is structured academic controversy. Now, the third strategy is structured academic controversy, or we can also call it as SAC. The reason I like SAC is that it teaches one of the most important teamwork skills: how to disagree respectfully and still reach a shared outcome. In many group tasks, conflict happen naturally, but students often don't have a process to handle it. So SAC gives them a clear structure. So disagreement becomes productive rather than personal. Now, as the slide says, it moves students beyond simple pro-con debate toward a more nuanced synthesis. So there are again four steps. The first step is preparation. Students work in pairs to prepare a position on the controversial, historical, or scientific issue. Collaborate, so what we as instructors can do for collaboration, like for example, I provide a short set of reading or evidences snippets so that debate stays grounded in the information and not on their own opinions. Okay. So for example, ethical marketing decisions or something like that. Then the second step is presentation. So each pair presents their slide while the other pair listens and take notes without interrupting. So again, this step is important because it trains for active listening. So and also it reduces emotional escalation. So again, one tip is we can assign some note taker roles or listeners to capture strongest evidence, key assumption, or one clarifying question, something like that. Then the third step is reverse understanding. So again, this is the most powerful step. The listening pair must repeat back the other side argument until the presenters are satisfied that they have been heard, right? So this builds psychological safety and empathy. It also forces accurate understanding before critique. So very similar to professional teamwork in meetings, right? So they can start their sentences like, what I hear you saying is this, or your strongest reason seems to be whatever the reason is. Okay. And then finally, the fourth step is consensus. So they come to consensus. The four-person team abandons their assigned roles and they work together to find common ground or clarify the nature of their differences. So now the goal is not who won. The goal is to have a shared decision, to have a shared statement of what is still unclear and what evidence would really resolve it, right? So this is how it helps. Now, uh, based on the strategies, also it is important that how we design the teams. So what is the team composition? So instead of leaving it to by chance, so in these kind of strategies, we must design the team with the proper structure. So there are four simple composition rules. The first one can be teacher form teams, so no self-selection. So this avoids friendship groups and prevent isolating quieter students. So we can form the groups for them. The second is heterogeneous teams, like making groups with mixed skills, experiences, and strengthen so that peer can support and learn from each other. Okay. And the ideal size of this team should be 5 to 7 members. So it is like large enough to have diverse ideas, but small enough so that everyone must participate. And also very important is to have permanent or long-term teams so that they can build trust, norms, and accountability over the period of time. So the main takeaway is that strong collaboration starts before the activity begins by forming balanced, stable teams with diverse strengths. So that is again very important. Coming to the fourth step now, fourth strategy, which is skill based collaborative activities. So, this is the final strategy which uses fun activities to build foundational teamwork skills, especially in early courses before high stake groups projects. So, one of the activity is egg drop challenge, where team must plan problem solving. They should communicate clearly to protect an egg from breaking. So, which is again great teamwork under some constraints. The second one is team scavengers hunt. So teams stay physically or logically connected while they're searching for items, which reduces divide and conquer, and it encourages their coordination behavior. The third is escape room challenges. These pushes teams to use each other's diverse strength and they solve clues under time pressure. Again, which is very, very good for collaboration and decision making. Then we have towel flip, which is popular for K2 groups, a simple physical task where students must coordinate and resolve conflict to succeed. Again, it shows cooperation in action. Again, the most important is that how we debrief, that is very essential. So I'll always end up by asking, like, what helped us work well as a team? What should we change the next time? Okay, so these are the questions which is really important to ask towards the end of each of these skill based fun activities. Now, this slides now ties everything together, the collaborative ecosystem. So this shows that how strong teamwork doesn't just come from one activity. It comes from an ecosystem with three parts reinforce each other, like structure, task design, and culture. So when we talk about structure, so things like jigsaw and intentional team formation. So this is how we should create that structure. So this prevents chaos by giving clear group roles and routines. The second is task design. So using tools like the 4S, what I talked about. So this really helps 4S framework and specific choice tasks. So this drives interaction so that students must think together and not just divide the task. Third is forming a culture. So strategies like SAC and building psychological safety. So this sustains effort because students feel respected. They are more willing to participate, right? So when these three things come together, we have cohesion. The group functions as a real team. So the main takeaway is if the team is weak, teamwork is weak, we diagnose where the gap is. So let's try to see if it is structure, task design, or culture and adjust that part. Okay. Now coming to the best practices for the implementation. So this is talking about what should we actually use for good implementation. The first is explicitly teaching skills. We can't assume students already know how to collaborate. Like I model simple behaviors, how to share turns, how to record data, how to give feedback. So using a quick role plays or think alouds, right? So we should tell them using naive tasks like I ask teams to make up initial decision before reading. So this sparks curiosity. Like they show why evidence matters because they want to confirm or adjust their first thinking, right? So giving them some naive tasks like that. Then praising collaboration is very, very important. So I try to praise all the time their process and not just the final answer, especially when the teams handle conflict respectfully or they include quieter members. So this signals that teamwork behaviors are really valued. And finally, I monitor and regulate. So my role is a facilitator. So I give minimal hints on guiding questions, or give them guiding questions to redirect their group work rather than giving them right answer. So students say stay responsible for thinking. Okay. So these are the best practices for implementation. Now, to close, this slide actually summarizes the measurable benefits for building collaborative culture. So, for individual, collaborative learning strengthens their public speaking, their active listening, critical thinking, and knowledge retention because students explain ideas, they hear different viewpoints, and they refine their thinking. For teams, It improves their self management, helps diverse learners connect, and builds a sense of shared identity. So, students start functioning like a real team rather than separate individuals. And my final thought is that when we structure the positive interdependence so that students genuinely need each other, we increase both motivation and academic achievement. So, that's the main message I want to leave with you. And yes, to close with, again, I just want to close with this reminder that collaboration is not a happy accident, it is a designed outcome. So instead of simply assigning group work, and hoping it goes well, we have to engineer collaboration by designing the conditions that we discussed today, right? So have clear structure, like having, sorry, stable and diverse teams, to have strong task design like 4S decisions that require interaction, and to build a safe culture where students can disagree respectfully, like SAC. So the mindset shift is stop assigning group work, start designing teamwork. Yeah. All right. So thank you so much for listening to me. And to support this presentation, I've used these mixed of foundational and recent academic sources. So some of them are like systematic review and meta-analysis on jigsaw method and collaborative learning and all of these. So if anybody would like, I can also share, these papers, what I have with me. So thank you so much for listening and hope you enjoyed my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm open for the questions. You can ask your questions right now. Thank you.